Okay, well, I'm going to intro Spencer. So Spencer Sampson has been at Tableau for 3.5 years. He currently supports our education and nonprofit enterprise customers. But before Tableau, he actually started his career as a teacher in the Texas public schools system, teaching math to middle school students. I would pass it to Spencer, but it sounds like he can't speak right now. So I'm going to say this. Oh, he's in, but he can't speak. He just said in the chat. Sorry, Spencer. So I will take over his speaking pieces, and I'm going to introduce Adam Miko. So Adam is a well-known Tableau ambassador, currently works as an evangelist at Curis, a Tableau partner. Before Curis, he worked as a senior data analyst in the public sector space and worked for state government for over 22 years. So, and also in 22, he was a Tableau public featured author and earned the Michael Christiani Community Leadership Award at Tableau Conference 2020. So we're really excited to have him part of the TUG leadership group. So I'll pass it to you, Adam, to introduce me.
Thank you, Vicki. Thanks for the great introduction. And yeah, conference-ish, we'll call it, back in 2020, but it was an awesome event regardless. So Vicki's been with Tableau for over 10 years. She worked in a wide variety of roles from operations, business development, and sales in multiple offices globally. Currently, she leads a national team whose sales support our mid-market nonprofit businesses. Her passion for coaching and development drives her to volunteer and mentor individuals within the underrepresented communities to further DEI initiatives. And I'll pass to Vicki to introduce one of our speakers from Splash.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adam. So enough about us, why you guys are all here, our customer speakers. So I am going to quit sharing real quick. And so super excited to introduce Splash. So Splash is a nonprofit organization that is bringing safe water, sanitation, hygiene, and menstrual health programs to over 700,000 children living in urban poverty across Asia and Africa every day. Splash's work focuses extensively on bringing the resources of public, private, and social sectors together to create scaled and lasting models of WASH success across some of the world's largest and poorest cities. So one of the two speakers, we have Laura Mapp, who is the Director of Development at Splash. She has over a decade of experience in nonprofit management, working for a variety of international foundations and nonprofits. Laura's previous roles included philanthropic program management and consulting at Linksbridge, the Henry M. Jackson Foundation, and the Channel Foundation. Laura loves working in Tableau and is always learning new things from our data or their data. So fun fact about Laura, she majored in music for much of college, which is pretty cool. Laura, any instruments that we play?
Pretty poorly at this point, but I was a vocal major. But don't ask me to sing.
Nice. Yes. All right. I'm going to pass it to Sam to quickly introduce Sam Perkins, and then we'll kick it off.
Or me. I'll introduce Sam Perkins.
Right.
So next up, we have Sam Perkins, an MPH, and she's the Senior Global Lead of Monitoring, Learning, and Evaluation at Splash. Sam's previous roles included program management and curriculum design at the Center of Global Health at the CDC, and project management at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. Sam has worked to implement, manage, and measure public health programs in many countries, primarily in sub-Saharan Africa. Based on these experiences, Sam believes that the most impactful organizations leverage MLE data to continuously consider and improve the success of their programming. Fun fact, she has traveled to 5 of 7 major continents. One day she hopes to get to Australia and Antarctica. In that order, Sam?
I would go to Antarctica first, as most would, I think. We should go there while we can.
Understood.
Great, Laura. Why don't you take it away?
Hey. Thank you so much. We're absolutely thrilled to be a part of this community and to be part of the first Tableau nonprofit user group, and hope there'll be many more to come. Okay, do you want to move on to slide 2? There we go. I'll start by giving us just a short introduction of Splash and our work. Vicki gave a great intro, but I'll just give you a little bit more detail. Splash is at the forefront of a growing movement to ensure that children in urban poverty have the resources that they need to thrive and realize their full potential. We do this through designing child-focused water, sanitation, and hygiene, or WASH, infrastructure and mental health solutions with governments in some of the world's biggest cities. So a little bit about our history. We started in 2007, and our first major project was to reach every orphanage in China with clean water. We achieved this goal in 2017, serving nearly 100,000 kids across 1,100 cities. And over time, our footprint has expanded to 8 countries in Asia and Africa, and we've really diversified our work beyond orphanages to include hospitals, feeding centers, shelters, and schools. And we've also expanded beyond water to include sanitation, hygiene, menstrual health solutions. And today, we're focused on reaching 100% of public schools in 2 major growth cities, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and Calcutta, India, through a project that we call Project WISE, or WASH in Schools for Everyone. So here's an aerial shot to give you a sense of the scale of this endeavor and the cities that we work in, which are massive and growing. In 2017, 4.1 million people were living in urban areas. That's almost half the world living in cities. And a lot of city dwellers, many of which who live in urban slums, don't have access to quality sanitation and water services. Next slide. This includes the schools that we work in. Previous slide, sorry, Sam. This includes the schools that we work in. So not only are the cities that we work in massive, so are the schools. The average school size in Addis Ababa is 1,000 kids, and we see many with much more than that. So 2,000, 5,000, even 9,000 kids. That means a whole lot of data, not only for our own internal program management and improvement, but also to show our donors and other external partners to prove our impact and make sure that the work we're doing lasts and is impactful. And this is also a complex issue. WASH is a multi-pronged intervention that could be difficult to communicate succinctly, particularly to audience that might not know a lot about water, sanitation, and hygiene. So, data puzzle. Next slide, please. And our first attempt to do this meaningfully with data was through a custom online platform that was called Proving It. This was in 2011, and Proving It allowed external stakeholders to see projects over time and get a real-time view of site functionality. At the time, it was revolutionary for the WASH field and got us intros with several new donors, but it really wasn't scalable. It was a custom platform that required external developers to update it, and our data was locked into the system, so we couldn't really analyze across sites or leverage the data in really any meaningful way. And it was still manually being entered into Excel spreadsheets. So we really needed a major overhaul. So that's why in 2015, we shifted over to Salesforce. And in 2017, our partnership started with Tableau. This migration has really allowed us to scale and ultimately have better and more informed decision making across the organization. And on the external communications front, we now have deeper conversations with donors about the work that we do and the impact we aim to have. I think next 2 slides, Sam, you might want to skip over these 2. This is a little bit more about kind of Proving It and the background of it, and some press that we had gotten at the time about Proving It. But now, this is the dashboard that we use the most when we're having introductory conversations with donors. And while it's not linked to our data warehouse yet, which Sam will go in a little bit more detail, it has been enormously helpful for donor communications. We leveraged this dashboard most recently in early 2020, pre-COVID, for a donor site visit in Addis Ababa. So imagine you're on a bus traveling around this massive city and you're with your biggest donor and you're hot and you're stressed and you're wondering if everybody's having a good time and are they getting the work and understanding what we do in an accurate light. So we preloaded the views, and so we were able to bring these up on while we were on the bus and toggle to a satellite view. Can you move to the next slide? And the next one too. To pull up a map of all the school sites on our project plan and also drill down on the individual school sites and neighborhoods where we were visiting. Next slide, please, Sam. And so this was really amazing to be able to pull up at our fingertips, and it gave the donor a really good understanding of the scale of our work. But this wasn't just about maps. Next slide, please. Back at Splash's offices in Addis, we were also able to leverage this outputs view to talk about our intervention in detail and the scale of the work ahead. And we could do this in a way that was consumable and allowed our donor to quickly understand our work and each aspect of our programmatic intervention. And kind of based on this positive experience, we hope to leverage Tableau in all of our site visits moving forward and to build on this dashboard to kind of create a suite of other dashboards for all of our donors and external partners. We've already developed some additional dashboards that donors have direct access to and that track our progress and impact, which has been really great. I'm now going to pass it off to Sam to give you an inside view of how we leverage Tableau and Salesforce for our programmatic data and give you more details about our data journey. Take it away, Sam.
All right, great. Thanks so much. As happens in this sort of remote from working from home world, my neighbor decided to start mowing their lawn right like a minute ago. So apologize for any background noise. Hope you bear with me. So thanks so much. As stated before, I'm Sam Perkins. I'm the Senior Global Lead of Monitoring, Learning, and Evaluation at Splash. And I'll be explaining a bit more of our data history and current processes. And to help with that, our team has actually created a moving timeline to illustrate changes to our program and our data. So I'll cue that up right now, hopefully relatively seamlessly. All right, I think that worked, great. So as Splash's programs evolved, so did our data needs and strategies to address those needs. This dashboard uses a timeline to show how the scope of Splash's work has grown. So you'll see in the top left the total number of beneficiaries that have received Splash programming. The types of sites will be shown here about receiving Splash programming, and then along the bottom will be the countries served, ranked by number of total beneficiaries along the bottom. And as we go through this information year over year, the blue boxes in the corner will describe how our data strategy changed to align with this growth. So to start with, in 2007, Splash starts with 10 sites in Nepal, Thailand, and Cambodia. At this point, all data management is happening in, you guessed it, Excel. In 2008, Splash starts to work in China and in Ethiopia. In 2009, you can see that our work in Chinese orphanages represents most of Splash's portfolio. In 2010, Proving It, as described by Laura earlier, is developed for tracking and reporting data across sites, but it was found to be really too cumbersome and manual to be internally useful. In 2011 and in 2012, programs continue to grow. In 2013, Splash starts work in Kolkata, India. Excuse me, in 2013. In 2014, realizing the need for a better understanding of WASH in schools at the city level, our first citywide survey is conducted in Kathmandu, Nepal. And these data give us a clear picture of water quality, availability, and high-level sanitation and hygiene need in government schools. In 2015, see some really important milestones for Splash and its data. Firstly, Splash's cumulative beneficiaries reaches over 500,000. In the meanwhile, we transitioned to Salesforce for data management, and our second citywide survey is conducted in Kolkata, India, with a mobile survey data tool called Formula. In 2016, the citywide survey in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia is conducted also using that tool called Formula. 2017, Splash's partnership with Tableau starts, giving Splash the opportunity to organize and share information in far better and new ways. In 2018, ProjectWise, our biggest project to date, officially starts in Kolkata. And this is the year our first Tableau dashboard powered by Salesforce data is developed. 2019, ProjectWise starts in Ethiopia. Formula is discontinued at Splash and replaced with ComCare as our only mobile data collection tool. And 2020 was really another banner year for us in spite of all the challenges that we globally faced that year. Our data warehouse is officially deployed, and Salesforce data, now used and created by every team at Splash, is fully integrated within it. Last year saw the first deployment of a Tableau dashboard that is fed information from the data warehouse, which gives all members of Splash virtually live access to much of our data. And this was a huge moment for us. Finally, it's worth noting that 2020 is the first year since 2008 where the highest number of total beneficiaries comes not from China, but from Ethiopia. And finally, here we are in 2021, not even all the way through the year, and things are still continuing to massively grow. And just because I think it's really impressive and I think our data team did such a great job with this dashboard, I'm going to play this timeline for you while I sum up here for you. Great. So clearly there's no way we could maintain all of these systems just using something like Excel. It really takes a well-maintained and well-oiled system that integrates many different types of data to extract meaningful information about Splash. In fact, this information we're looking at right now was made using Tableau, powered by data that made its way from our mobile data collection tools, ComCare and Formula, was stored and organized in Salesforce, and then is used to feed into many of our Tableau dashboards through our data warehouse. So I would like to now transition back to the PowerPoint so I can give you an overview of what our tech stack looks like today. Great. So this graphic is a simplified description of our tech stack. Our data's journey starts with input either through ComCare or Salesforce. Generally speaking, Salesforce is where we maintain more process-facing data, like recording the number of hand washing stations that are installed by Splash. And ComCare is where we gather more outcome-facing data, like, for example, recording the functionality of those hand washing stations over time. These two systems are very much designed to complement one another. Our data then go through a staged process in the data warehouse where our extraction, transformation, and loading processes happen to our data. This is very much a dynamic, almost living and breathing system that is maintained by our tech team at Splash using a tool called Alteryx. And finally, our data output, analysis, and display are almost done exclusively in Tableau, which is why we're all here today. We have several dashboards at Splash. Most of them are internal for now, but we do have select dashboards that we have made accessible to our donors. So given the automation that we have built into this tech stack, means that we and those donors are able to actively monitor our programs. So what did we learn from all of this development and evolution? We can boil this down into two do's and two don'ts. So, do. Remember that data systems are a necessary and considerable front-end investment. I doubt this comes as news to anyone on this call, but it is a fact worth repeating. To be successful, both program development and data strategy should be built up simultaneously. And to do this requires resources. There is the sort of obvious financial investment, which can be considerable, but there's also time, thought, and staff resources that are also a deeply worthy investment. One thing that Splash does very well is that we reach out for help in many areas by leveraging the skills and wisdom of experts. The Tableau Foundation has been a huge help to us in this way by connecting us with trainings and resources and people who give great advice. More importantly, these people know what questions to ask and how to make the answers to those questions come to life. So for example, a company called Star Schema developed our data warehouse. They helped us establish the underlying architecture of our data and how to get our data from A to B to Z in a way that we can actually manage in-house. And finally, we worked with a number of Zen masters who have been amazing assets in helping us create dashboards that are functional and informative and speak to our mission. don'ts. So something that Splash is learning, and what I have actually spent much of this year working on, is that it is not worthwhile to try and capture perfect data about every single component. Firstly, perfect data just don't really exist. And secondly, as you can see, the scale of Splash's work has grown enormously over the years. So the granular data points we had the luxury to capture 5 years ago just don't really work for us anymore. So we've been going through this process of delineating what must be measured to better understand the program versus what things we're just sort of comfortable assuming. And finally, while it is so tempting to have Tableau do all of these incredible things, the aesthetics of a dashboard should not overrun the functionality and the internal processes. At Splash, we use dashboards for a lot of internal learning and decision-making. And a great example of this is my personal favorite dashboard we have at Splash, which was created by our very talented program data team, some of whom are here today, so shout out to you. So I'd like to show that dashboard to you to illustrate this last point. I want to be clear that I actually do think this dashboard is very beautiful, but not just in how it looks, but in what it successfully communicates. The system and process behind it is what I find really beautiful about it. So again, I would like to go to that dashboard and it will be live. Great. Okay. So this is what we call our deployment dashboard. And it is the singular best source of information for where we are in program implementation of Project Wise. So this information comes from our data warehouse and is updated automatically every day. So I'll just sort of walk you through the high points of this dashboard. This is showing Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Group 1. We divide our work into groups. And here we can see that there are 54 sites in this groups. And these are the number of people who are served within that group. So if you linger on this, cool little detailed information will pop up here. We are currently 13% complete in implementing this group. And in order for a site to be deemed complete, 4 things need to be confirmed and recorded as complete by designated local staff in each city. So that would be water infrastructure, sanitation infrastructure, donor plaque placement, and behavior change activities and events. Each of these areas have very specific criteria and definitions that our staff were trained on. So to give you another example, we can go to Kolkata Group 1 to show you how dynamic this is. All right, so we are 100% complete in this group, though I wanted to show that this dashboard allows for some nuance. So we can see that while this group is considered complete, sanitation infrastructure was only done at 71 sites out of the total 72, but that's because there was one site where that's not applicable. If I wanted to see more information about that particular site, I could click on this and it would take me to a different tab in this dashboard that would give me more details about what's going on with that site. So while this dashboard is fantastic in so many ways, it actually represents only the final part of a much larger process that our program data team planned and executed. Considerable effort was put into training staff, and there is actually a separate ongoing process that ensures data quality to make sure that the information presented here is accurate. To me, this is the pinnacle of using data systems in a smart and strategic way. There was a time not that long ago where this information would have been stored in multiple spreadsheets, living in dozens of folders, and most likely living in somebody's email. So now I, or anyone at Splash, can go to this dashboard to find out where we are. So for my team in particular, this process is what allows us to know when sites are ready for post-implementation surveys, which we do at every site, but only when the work is confirmed complete. So that is our dashboard. My personal favorite one, although there are really good contenders for others. So thanks so much for taking the time to learn about Splash and how we use and organize our data. Laura's and my emails along the bottom here. I think I speak for both of us when I say, please do feel free to reach out to us at any time. We are genuinely thrilled to connect with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura and Sam. That was a really great presentation. Dan Smiley said, great storytelling, very TED Talk-esque. What a compliment. Hey. We did have a question and there was some answers, but I thought it'd be good for us to just talk it out. Margaret mentioned or asked, when you post dashboard for donors to view, how do you do that without making the donor a user? Are you posting to Tableau Public? Did Laura or Sam, and I think someone else kind of want to just verbally answer that question for the group, the wider group?
Yeah, I can verbally answer. That's such a great question, Margaret. And it depends on the external, audience or donor that we're working with. We kind of leverage all different platforms. So we've shared like either PDFs, like just a straight download and share it via email. We've also shared on Tableau Public. And for more kind of sensitive data, because we're dealing with children at schools, we sometimes share that data via Tableau Online. And to your question of for those users, we really limit the number of folks that kind of have access to that data. And when we do share that data, we do share it mainly at the view level. And it is through generous kind of licenses that have been donated to Splash through the Tableau Foundation. So that's a really great question. I'd say we've kind of found, using different levels of access has been really helpful for us, and also has allowed us not to like run through a bunch of licenses, because we really, need the vast majority of those for our team.
Another question came up real quick, and Sanju asked if Splash is helping schools at Kathmandu, Nepal at this point.
So we have worked in Nepal for several years. I think at this point we're at like 70% of the schools. Is that right, Sam? 60, 70?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah. And so we are still doing some implementations there, although the vast majority of our work right now is focused on Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and Kolkata, India. But yeah, we definitely have been active in Nepal.
Incredible.
Yeah,
Thanks.
incredible work. We can probably squeeze in one more question. What Dan just asked, did the donor on the bus write another check?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
They remain a donor, yes. They're wonderful donor, and I think it was really, really helpful to have those dashboards to tell that story, because you're driving through a city and it's kind of hard to grasp you're talking about, right? Like, and how many schools you're actually impacting and where those schools are. It was very helpful to have those dashboards. I highly recommend it.
Let's do one last question. Does Splash have any advice on maintaining and ensuring data quality?
Well, I can speak a little bit to that, and to let you know that I think one of our strongest assets is that the teams that are doing the work within Splash are the ones who are responsible for entering in that information. So for example, our engineering teams that go out and install our and urinals and hand washing stations, they are the ones responsible for entering that information into Salesforce, what they did, how many things they installed, and what date it happened on. And the same thing with our behavior change team. We went and we did this activity on this date. And cutting out that middleman, instead of having a data management team being directly responsible for that, allows for really high data quality. And on top of that, we actually have staff who are purely dedicated to ensuring data quality. They work with the local teams. Teams and country, and while they aren't doing direct data entry themselves, they are staying on top of it, ensuring that that work is actually happening and that it's making sense and working well within our systems. They've actually used and come up with some really creative ways of using Tableau to do those data quality checks. And that is always an evolving process that we keep finding new and better ways of doing that. And two of those team members are actually on this call today, which I'm actually very thrilled about.
Great. Maria says, when you're driving, you're not online, so having those work offline for them is amazing. I think this is in reference to the bus. Dennis mentions the benefits of visualizing the data seems obvious, but I wonder if you got any pushback at the initial planning stages, especially given the upfront investments, cost, time, etc. that is needed. Great question, Dennis. Laura, I see you nodding your head.
I think Sam and I can piggyback on this. I mean, to Sam's kind of presentation, it does require a lot of upfront investment, cost, time, et cetera. And I wouldn't say pushback was really what happened, but it takes some time. And I think for a lot of folks that aren't familiar with data and data systems, the amount of time that it takes, I think is something that kind of our MLE team and others that are kind of intimate with Tableau and data kind of kept on hammering home, right? Of like, we are getting there. Like this is one step in a multi-step process. So at least for us, that was helpful in kind of continuing to maintain momentum and continuing to have buy-in, at the management, level, to go down this path. Sam, I don't know if you have other thoughts on that, but.
No, I don't think that there was, I'm not sure that pushback is necessarily the right word, but it is sort of a constant reminder that we need to, this is an evolving process and we will constantly find new things, not only in our data, but like new and better ways to show those findings in our data. And on top of that, I mean, it's so easy to just sort of blame everything on COVID, and I'm not necessarily trying to do that, but there was sort of like massive program disruptions that happened during that time, which means that there are limits to what we can and can't say about our data, because while days and months and years have actually passed, program time has actually been less than that because of these disruptions. So I think that I would sort of come back to monitoring, learning, and evaluation systems should always be built in conjunction with program development. Absolutely. Like that should happen right from day one. However, there should also be an understanding that the results of that monitoring, learning, and evaluation work will actually always be kind of a step behind program implementation, because we need that data to come in. We need a little bit of time to make sense of it. And Tableau was actually really great about making sense of data. What used to take me cumulative like days of my life to make things happen in Excel can now be done with a few clicks in Tableau, which is enormously helpful in that process.
Great. All right. I think we need to pivot here. So thank you again, Laura and Samantha. That was wonderful to hear the wonderful work you guys are doing globally. So we will transition to equal opportunity schools. So equal opportunity schools' mission is to ensure that students of color and low income students have equitable access to America's most academically intense high school programs and succeed at the highest levels. Their partnerships are consultative, collaborative, and requires a commitment to specific and measurable results. Equal opportunity schools has helped more than 600 students identify students of color, low-income students who qualify for but are missing from AP, advanced placement, or international baccalaureate IB classes. Working together, they successfully enroll them and support their academic success. So a little about Jessica. So I have the pleasure of introducing Jessica from Equal Opportunity Schools. She has been working in data and analytics for over a decade on social justice issues, using data to create action and drive change. Jessica started her data career in the world of public opinion research and campaign strategy. She currently serves as a senior director of reporting and analytics at Equal Opportunity Schools. And during the talk, Jessica will share how her team has leveraged their data and Tableau skills to help their partner schools understand the student experience during the COVID pandemic. So fun fact about Jessica, in her early years, she grew up on a farm where the mayor was, in a small town on a farm where the mayor was a goat. When I read this, I was very shocked. And then they lived on Easy Street, and her two best friends were two dogs. Jessica?
Thanks so much, Vicki. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate being here. Super this community coming together. I know my team, especially in COVID times, are missing seeing people in. I also want to just thank Tableau and the Tableau Foundation for your continued support of our organization. We truly couldn't be where we are today and serving our clients in the way that we are without your support. So I will get started. Vicki, thank you so much for kind of summarizing the work that we do. Equal Opportunity Schools work to ensure that students of color and low-income students have equitable access to programs across the United States. We work public high schools across the country. We've worked with over 600 schools in 200 plus districts. Our program is multi-phase, meaning they can start with us and work for years in different models and iterations depending on how they're growing and adapting and how the work is changing and evolving. We also have a clear program model and path, but we also know that each high school has its own unique context. And so we make sure that the partnership can adapt to their needs. And that's where Tableau definitely comes into play for us. Data needs to be accessible and also explorable and fit the context of the schools we're working in. So one of the kind of cornerstone ways that we define equity at our organization is through this chart called the opportunity chart. We define equity as if you are any student in school not dependent on your race or income, you should be as likely to be participating in advanced placement or international baccalaureate programs as your peer. We can see that across the country, unfortunately, we don't find that to be true. We find that typically our students of color, low-income students, are less likely to be participating than our white and Asian higher income students. This is an example of a chart that a partner school would get to understand their context and the goals that we want to achieve with them in the work that we'll do with them. But we know that enrollment data, grade data, test data, those are all things that our schools already have access for, and we still have these equity challenges. So these are kind of our easy to observe attributes about a school. Those are things that students see all the time. But the harder to observe things are things like the learning mindsets of students, their self-identity, belonging experiences that they might be having when they walk into a classroom, how they feel either that they don't belong or they do, their aspirations for their future, and also those interpersonal relationships that they have or don't have within the school with adults or peers to help help them navigate their trajectory within the school. And so those are the things that Equal Opportunity Schools really works hard for adding context to our schools so they can understand the deeper inequities that are existing within their schools and what is preventing students from entering those classrooms. And so some of that is policy changes. What are the policies that are preventing students? Is it a lack of adult encouragement? Are there other barriers like they don't even know that these programs exist in their school, or they don't know how to access those programs? Or they don't actually feel welcome because when they walk in, they don't know anyone else in the classroom. We also work really hard to use our data to center the individual student. So while we use our data to understand the more holistic issues of the school and help them improve their policies and practices, we also want them to understand that there are individual students right now today sitting in their classrooms or right now virtually for some places where they are just on the cusp of needing that opportunity and needing someone to reach out and talk to them about why they should take the chance of a more advanced class. So this is what we call a student insight card. It's a cumulative, it brings all of our data together. So the things that typically a teacher would know about a student is their GPA and test scores. But what we do is really fill in the other details, like what are their aspirations? What do they want to do when they leave the doors of their high school? Who are the people within the building, in the school that they go to for advice or help? How can we leverage those relationships to ensure that they're hearing from those teachers why they should be in these programs? Who's advocating that they enter these programs? Because a lot of times there's a lot of people within the school who are saying this kid should be in this program, but no one's actually talked to them about it. And then also, what are their reported barriers that are preventing them from entering those classrooms? And then always the opportunity to share their unique voice and perspective. This is all gathered from survey results. And so we use Qualtrics to gather the data. We use a Postgres database to then, and an API to then capture the data and store in our Postgres database. And so naturally when COVID hit, we knew that there was, But this is all rolled up to big impact for our students. So as Vicki kind of talked about, since 2013, this has meant that we have supported schools adding an additional 53,000 students of color and low-income students to these advanced pathways and opportunities. And so again, when COVID hit, we knew that we had a job to do, and that we needed to respond in a way that would resonate with our schools. Obviously, when students went remote, it wasn't just a question of, are you going to be in AP and are you going to take these advanced courses, but really like, where are these students? What's happening with students? Are they engaged? Are they feeling heard and seen? And how can we better understand how to triage these experiences that our students are having? So we as an organization decided to quickly stand up a survey in the spring of 2020 to really capture those experiences. We used Qualtrics again, but we knew that we needed to act as quickly as possible given how students were shifting so quickly to these remote environments. And frankly, many of our schools are spending lots of time just trying to locate these students, let alone like talk to them about college and career opportunities. So we stood up the survey, offered it for all of our clients. We also made the decision to use the Qualtrics data connector rather than the API to bring it into our database. That was because we knew we could do it really quickly. We didn't need to use our developers' time to set up the our database manager's time to set up the survey. We didn't need to use our developers' time to set up any of the abilities on the back end to monitor the survey progress. We built it straight in our Tableau server. So this is new for us. We have an online application that all of our clients have access to, and that's where they normally see and experience their data. But we, again, knew it needed to happen quickly. So our team quickly put these together with the help of a few awesome Tableau Zen masters. One was the response rate. So we knew that students were remote. So it was going to be really hard for schools to know, are students actually taking the surveys, what's happening. So this allowed them to see the rate in which students are taking, but also see which students had or had not taken it yet. We also had an element of our survey that allowed schools and students to say, I need to talk to someone at the school. So this dashboard right here actually displays students' contact information saying that they want someone to reach out to them. And then also, we always find it really important to ensure that people are looking at the open response data to hear the student's experience in their own true voice. And so we had a place where folks could actually explore and read those on their own. Now, unfortunately, I can't go to any of those because they have private student information in them, but I'm going to show you the summary just to talk a little bit about some in knowing that our clients would be experiencing Tableau server directly, which was a new experience for them. We thought about were, what are things that we offer our internal staff we can now offer our clients. So things like, obviously, but also honestly, we had a fresh perspective in terms of the design etiquette and used actually very different design that we usually apply our reports and dashboards. We try and keep things really simple for clients because we never know who's going to be interfacing with them. It could be from a teacher to a school counselor to a parent. And the kind of displays that we used here are more similar to what we do when we do internal dashboarding and monitoring, which I think our clients really enjoy. Just to quickly go over some of the findings that we had in this time was we saw that motivation was really impacted for students. Over 3/4 of students reported that they were facing motivation issues. We also saw that these relational pieces that we know are so important to students were saying that they were less likely to feel connected to their teachers and peers, less engaged in school, and having interactions with folks. On the flip side, we also did notice some other interesting trends we're paying attention to. So we did ask, what more likely to be attentive to the new in your community and what's happening across the country. And we can see that the majority of the students did report that. And even more interestingly, we can see that 3/4 of the students said, I'm more aware of the inequities that exist in this world than I was before. Help us think about how to leverage students in terms of improving their actual experiences within schools and how they can be a part of the solution. It also shows kind of impact of the other engagement issues students were feeling overwhelmed, unmotivated, lack of ability to focus. And also, it's hard to do my homework right now. This dashboard also allows you to then drill down and see, based on some experiences or ways that students, barriers that students are facing, like a decreased motivation. You can then see how these items actually show up for those individual students. So schools could respond to all of their students, but also for the unique barriers that students were feeling, like decreased belonging. What are the things for them? And then we also wanted to really give our schools the opportunity to learn about what students were saying about how they could make more engaging schoolwork for students. And it's really interesting. Students were really reporting they want to connect to things they care about. This is also in the context of not just a global pandemic, but also the George Floyd murder. So I think students were really engaged in a lot of different ways. So they also said explicitly discuss things like race and gender, create time for students to share their experiences of what they're going through, and help me express my values and personal identity. And so impactful for us in learning how we could further help our students. So in the fall, we actually put together some views that then were in our actual fall survey. So we incorporated the questions that we had asked in the spring into our fall survey and created, I would say, a more traditional EOS report. So now clients were not able to view this report in server that was reserved just for the pandemic. Typically, when folks receive reports from us, it's either through our online application where we actually embed dashboards for our users and they can experience them there, or oftentimes they receive them as PDFs. Working with schools, there are some requirements that sometimes don't make sense to us in the tech world, but people like to print things out still sometimes, which I know can be shocking. But oftentimes we share it as a PDF so that school principals can share it with community members in a school meeting. We also create slide decks for folks so they can put it up on a slideshow, but it's a very less dynamic kind of way of interacting with Tableau. And so this definitely went back to some of those more traditional things. We can see that the aesthetic of the general views to what we spring, but there's a lot less interaction in terms of being able to cross-reference it with different are reporting on different survey questions. We can see that some of the findings that we had from this time was in the fall of 2020. Students were still reporting feelings of not being motivated, but we can see some of the relational pieces were starting to improve from the spring. So we can see that students were starting to feel more connected again to their teachers in school, having quality interactions. We also this report would be different than our spring report in that be hand delivering this report. So we would have EOS staff actually presenting this data and sharing it with our clients, whereas the other data was actually directly consumed or available to our clients in real time whenever they so choose. So we had a lot in terms of what that steps here and how do you follow up and what are the things that we'll be doing for the partnership to actually actionize this data. But again, we can see that some of the same issues persisted in terms of feeling unmotivated, overwhelmed, issues doing homework. I also thought it was extremely interesting that a third of our students were still reporting that they were dealing with family and personal health issues. And so just thinking about our reflections from this time, I think it definitely led our team to think about what are kind of the design requirements that we should be considering for our clients, and should we like take a step back a little bit and think about what we offer our clients in terms of what the look and feel of our report. So like I said, for our spring survey where folks were able to actually log directly onto server, they had a live data connection, they had increased flexibility. So they were really able to kind of draw their own path. As they had questions, they were able to explore the data in real time rather than asking someone questions and kind of getting those responses kind of hand fed to them. And like I said, we adopted some of the internal design practices that sometimes we worry, we never know who's going to be consuming our data. And so we try and make it as palatable as possible in terms of simplicity. And sometimes I think that results in like bar graph on bar graph on bar graph, when really we can maybe be a little more creative. The fall report definitely, shared generally as a PDF. Some of the requirements were we need a pre-canned report. So, a lot of our folks who work directly in the schools, they don't want to have to customize anything. They want to be able to kind of grab and go. So that still continues to be a requirement for us. But I think there are ways that we could adjust some of the look and feel of what we do, have options for those who do want to explore the data, but trust our partners a little bit more to stay focused on the mission of the organization and the goals that we're set out to do without getting too much in the weeds of the data. And sometimes getting in the weeds of the data is really good. And sometimes they know the questions that they need to ask that we wouldn't even think of. So, like I said earlier, the fall report was really designed for a more universal audience. People take it and go places that we don't even know our data gets to see. And clear directives really kind of, here are the next steps in the partnership. With COVID-19 happening so quickly and schools changing so quickly in the spring, we really weren't sure what it all meant for our schools or what it meant for our data in terms of what it would inform and what it really could achieve. So I think now that we're still kind of thinking and reflecting about the differences in those reports, we're really thinking through what kind of style and design is right to move towards for our general reporting. What all should we be more universally sharing on our online application as embedded visuals and dashboards? I think one other thing that we're reflecting on is, while it was empowering and exciting to give clients direct access to our Tableau server, we definitely, had concerns about creating too many spaces for our clients to log in. I know that's a big complaint of people often is I have so many passwords, I have so many things that I need to remember. So really our online portal should be kind of the direct access, one-stop shop for them getting access to their data. So we do have some clients who are still interested in pursuing direct access to server. I think the question there for me is it because there's so much more that they can explore, and should that just then be on our online application? So we still have a lot of questions we're considering. This year we're taking a big initiative to really think through the bigger picture of our data narrative, not just from a programmatic perspective, but also from an internal and external perspective of our funders and how we talk about our work and the impact that we're having for students. And yeah, thank you so much to everyone, especially to Tableau and the Tableau Foundation and the greater Tableau community. We've always felt so supported, not just by Tableau and the foundation, but by the community as a whole. And like I said, really, can't wait to get back in person, but until then are really excited to hear more about what other folks are doing with Tableau and, really get inspired by seeing what other people are doing and sharing in the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. A really nice comment here in the chat for you. Every time I watch an EOS demo, I am blown away. Thank you so much for sharing and for the inspiration to the EOS team. So thank you, Jessica. We do have a question in the chat. Seems like you have a lot of attention to making sure your dashboards are clear and digestible to your end users, clear terminology, etc. how do you go about taking all of the data you are using and turn it into something that is accessible to what I imagine is a very wide range of folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's some of the work that we want to be doing this year because, as you can imagine, as we started to really realize the power of our data, we were really reactive to what clients were asking for and what our internal stakeholders, so other partnership directors, people who are going out into the field were saying like, I need this, or it'd be great if we could do this. And so we, have a lot of content in terms of being able to have insight into their data. And I'm always surprised by how little schools actually have, like principals and school administrators have access to their own data. And so we try and have clear pathways of enrollment, grade, exam, and then, kind of the more holistic um, student experience. And that does lead us to have a few different reports that people consume, but really we see it as our job to tell a story through those reports. So it's not just one chart saying one thing. That's some of what I shared with you all, but our more comprehensive reports work really hard to kind of tell a picture of here are the thematic issues. And then also aligning it, it's really important that we work collaboratively to align those with the practices that are actually showing up and how the program is being implemented on the ground. So working with our folks who are the consultants in the field to ensure that what they're talking about is exactly what the data is doing. And, for better or for worse, some of my favorite things are to say, like, okay, what is the thing you're trying to solve, or what are you trying to do, and how can our data actually further enable that? So things like, I don't know why my Black students have not signed up for these courses. Well, we can look at our data and dive into specifically that group of students. And I think what I love about our data too is we have the ability to look at it from a high level, but then really drill down into like, and here are the individual students you should go talk to about why they're not enrolling. I think that answered the question a bit.
Great. And then there is another question from Steve. Are you partnered with both urban and rural schools? If so, are there any significant differences in approach or reports by student?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And, as we started to grow, that definitely became a big challenge for us from a data perspective. I think the rural versus urban is a very different dynamic. And so we try and make all of our reports adaptable based on not just the setting of the school, but the dynamics of the school. So the demographic considerations, but then also things that get impacted, like the number of classes that are offered. So sometimes in certain communities, there are schools that only have one class. And so we really work with those clients to talk about how they want to expand the program versus just the equity lens of it all. And so, we definitely think about not just the equity piece, but like how does a school do their course planning, which is stuff that, when you first think about the size of our mission, you don't think about all the then ramifications that come from an expanding program such as this. But that's where Tableau really has helped us, because we can make really adaptable reports quickly to say, this one needs to be looking at income versus race. And it's just a click of a button for our users to say, my school context is X. This is the problem that they're dealing with. But it doesn't actually have to change too much the actual building of the report.
Great. Another question, is it the same team that designs the survey questions and then delivers the analysis?
That's a great question. So we kind of have several different people who work on the actual survey. So I, from my seat at reporting and analytics, work on the survey, but we also have a research team that helps contribute to the survey. We have our folks who are actually, working to build the model and work directly with clients who have a seat at the table. And then our head of strategy also works on it. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and sometimes we have to say, okay, I usually drive the end decision making, but obviously our researchers have a huge hand in the questions that we actually ask.
Great. And then another question in regards to, are there any predictive analytics that y'all are leveraging
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we do create an actual list of students, which always feels like a daunting task of like, okay, here's an actual list of kids. What is it exactly that we're looking for? And so we do have an algorithm that we use to apply. I will say it's pretty inclusive in terms of who we ask for them to consider, but it does take things like what we know about students in terms of their learning mindsets. We also use their grades and exams, but then we also use their barriers to say, these are things that are getting in the way of the student actually getting these opportunities, and the number of teachers recommending them. We also know is a huge driver.
Dan mentions if anyone wants to talk to the LA Unified School District Analysis Unit, they're really amazing. Mission-driven folks, they're doing really innovative work in Tableau. Great.
Yeah.
All right.
We've definitely had some school partners do some amazing things in Tableau as well, which is always really exciting.
Wonderful. Wonderful participation and questions. So I'm just going to pivot a little bit. We were going to go straight into Remo, but for the purpose of this recording, I'm going to high level just go over some upcoming events and resources. And then we have cut into kind of our networking Remo time. So it'll be pretty short, and then we'll bring everyone back at the end just to do our quick raffle and then let everyone go. So I'm going to quickly share my screen to just share upcoming events. Well, right now we only have one. So we have in September, we have a non-for-profit or NGO webinar just around advancement, and it's going to be featuring Girls Who Code, sponsored by SOLAS and AWS. Oh yeah, hello, Jessica. Thank you so much for your beautiful presentation. Bridget just says, great job as always, Jessica. Sorry, I'm just like all over the place right now. And then just some resources to drive everyone to. We do have a TUG or nonprofit TUG hub. So I'll send these links out to each of y'all in an email. And then there's also a community forum. We also have a LinkedIn group that we're trying to start cultivating. And then we will be creating a Slack channel. I'm trying to figure out the logistics of that with the external piece of everybody. But our EDU space has a very robust Slack channel, and it helps people be a lot more collaborative and just more of a dialogue via Slack. So we will be creating that in the near future. And then Dan, one of our VPs, he has been working with some of our NGOs to create a specific, I believe it's just people who are really focused on fundraising. So we'll also send out a link to kind of our more specific, like sub-vertical of the kind of nonprofit, or it's about advancement, excuse me. So we'll send that information out as well. And so kind of the high level goal, like this national TUG will help co-lead, and it'll always be kind of a little bit more general. We'll have rotating speakers and use cases, but as kind of this community grows, we very much see, and especially once we get back into person, more localized nonprofit specific user groups, or even just sub verticals of like, donor management or, fundraising, advancement. We're going to assume that's going to organically happen within the community, but we'll always kind of be the overall kind of umbrella, and then we'll help kind of keep all the kind of different links and resources together for people to we'll be basically the landing page, and then let people branch out into their things. So that's that one. All of that information via the email. In the email also, I will send out a survey. So for feedback, ideas, requests, things like that, let us know. Also, if you kind of want to help lead a TUG in the future or be a part of the leadership group, let us know. We'll send our contact information as well in that. And